I love Zen stories. I've read many, many Zen stories. And one of my favorites is the story of an old man. And one day, his son comes back with some wild horses that he has captured. And the villagers all go, "Oh, this is super, fantastic, you've got free horses." And the old man says, "Maybe." The next day, the son is trying to break the horses. And he falls off, and instead of breaking the horses, he breaks an arm and a hip and a rib. And the villagers say, "Oh, you were so unlucky. Those horses, they should have never come." And the old man says, "Maybe." So the next day, the army comes, and they take all the eligible young men off to go to war. And the villagers come, and they say, "You're so lucky you get to keep your son." And the old man says, "Maybe." So I've worked at a lot of places. And when I started working at LinkedIn, everybody said, "You're gonna go work at a resume site. Okay, good luck with that." And when I went to MySpace, people were like, "Wow, okay, that's a big challenge, but maybe." When I went to Zynga, everybody congratulated me. "You're working at the hottest company in the entire industry." So I have also learned to say, maybe. It's really hard to know how things are going to turn out. But I will say during this journey, I have been very, very, very lucky. I have learned amazing things, and I'm hoping that you will be willing to take this gift from me of some of the things I've learned kind of the hard way. This is one of the things I've learned. So I would love to tell you stories. I would love to tell you stories, and maybe at the cocktail hour we'll tell some stories. But in order, since this is recorded, I'm going to go a different direction. I'm going to tell a fictional story. Okay, so once upon a time, there was a little startup, and they had a dream. They thought, what if we brought really good tea to fine restaurants? Why are fine restaurants serving silly little tea bags, when there's really good tea? They care about espresso and they don't care about tea. One founder was named Hannah. She was first generation Chinese, and she really missed the tea that she had grown up with, that she had in her parents' house. The other founder was Jack. He was British, so you can imagine what he thought of the tea he was getting in America. And they met at Stanford, where they were both students. Jack was an HCI design student, and Hannah was an MBA. And they started talking about tea and how lousy it was, and they started their startup. And because they went to Stanford and could do math, they got funded. And they got enough money to try to do something. I'm just saying, speaking of hard lessons. So they had a wonderful time in those first 6 months. They got their office and they got to decorate it. They hired some engineers. They built a website that would put together restaurants and small tea producers, and they were having a great time. But after a while, they started to notice something. All the tea producers, the people who actually make it, were happy to sign up on the site. I mean, they were looking to sell some tea, right? But not that many restaurants were signing up to use the website. And then one day, Hannah went out and she sold the tea to a distributor. Now, distributors are those guys who drive up in the big trucks and they unload at the restaurant and they have the Starbucks coffee and the big slabs of meat and the canned tomatoes and everything. And to be honest, they were sort of everything that Jack despised. However, Hannah had made quite a bit of money on this, and so he had to kind of live with this. And then she went out and did it again. And darn that crazy girl, she went out and made them more money. And so she had to have a little conversation with Jack. What if our customers aren't restaurants? What if our customers are actually these distributors? And they had a big argument about it, and they decided, hey, let's go see our angel investor. He's wise. He invested in Google. He invested in Facebook. He's been around the block. And so they went to talk to Jim Frost. So Jim said, hey, guys, I hear what you're saying. This is a hard decision. So what I like to do when I'm deciding is I like to play let's pretend. So let's pretend you did go ahead and do this deal with distributors. What would it look like? How would things change? What's that world? Instead of we have to pick, we have to decide. Let's just act as if. And he told this story from Intel. And I wrote it out because I wanted to get it just right. So Andy Grove says, I looked out the window at the Ferris wheel. This was when Intel was being attacked by the Japanese cheap memory makers. I looked out the window at the Ferris wheel of the Great American Amusement Park, revolving in the distance, and then I turned back to Gordon and I asked, if we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he'd do? He would get us out of memory. Well, why don't we walk out the door, pretend we're the new CEO, and do it ourselves? I don't know why more people don't think of this. What if we just act as if it was happening? And so, I find that you can say, well, let's pretend we're a B2B company. I love game design, so this is just like creating a little magic circle. What would we do? Well, we'd hire salespeople, right? Because you need salespeople to go out and make these big deals. We'd hire customer support, because if you've got a $100,000 deal, you want somebody to pick up the phone, right? Maybe we'll even hire a new CEO, who knows? So after some conversation, they decided to focus on a new customer base. But Jim said, I got something else for you, also from Intel, something I learned from John Doerr. There's this thing that will help get your team really executing against this idea. They're called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results.